aina na moho I mi pono o ka aina o nei ho o he no ai lohe ia kau ka pe a holo ka wā a kaulua ka wā a kaulua ka wā a kaulua
Velina mai me ke aloha e ka lehu, and mahalo for joining our A'o Aku, A'o Mai Kulaiwi Series 2021. My name is Ashley Helenihi of Ka'ahalahui o Ole Kona Hawaiian Civic Club of Oregon and Southwest Washington, a nonprofit organization with a mission to actively participate in the promotion, perpetuation, and practice of the Native Hawaiian culture and values, which was founded in October of 2019. Through various programs like Ngā Kamali'i Talk Story, Haloa Youth Summer Programs, and Mālama Ohana, we have been able to reach out and build relationships and connections within our communities. Our participation and support of COVID-19 vaccine drives, Mauna Wakea, Black Lives Matter, Count Us In, Census 2020, Utopia PDX, Oregon Pacific Islanders Coalition, Pacific Islander Data Modernization Program, Stop AAPI Hate, and so many more have allowed us to grow and actively participate in the change we are all needing to see. For more information, please visit our website at www.kalohcc.org. Now, I would like to introduce Naomi Helenihi, who will be opening our session with an acknowledgement of our Indigenous relatives. Aloha e Naomi.
We are here in Beaverton, Oregon, the ancestral homelands of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, which includes the Umpqua, the Molalla, the Rogue River, the Kalapuya, and the Shasta. Since time immemorial, the people have relied on these traditional landscapes for their livelihood, gathering roots and berries and plants for weaving and making tools. The fish and game were plentiful and what the land center provide, they acquired by trade. Salmon was very important and was caught at Willamette Falls in Oregon City, and the abundance of salmon brought tribal members from all over the Pacific Northwest to fish, to trade and socialize at the falls. It created an economic center for the region. We honor and acknowledge these lands and waters that still carry the stories of the Grand Ronde people and their struggle for survival and identity.
Oh, mahalo, Naomi. It's good to see you. You did a good job. Aloha awina la kako. I'm Auntie Louise, and I am the moderator for today. I come from Honolulu, Oahu, and I am Native Hawaiian, and I'm also a member of the Oto Missouri tribe of Oklahoma. And I would like to start off and to introduce another one of our panelists, Auntie Haunani. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Aloha, I'm Haunani Kalama, and I've been here in this area for the last 10 years. I come from Kuauli, which is the island of Hawaii. And I'm a la'aulapa'au, a medicine person, so caring for the well-being of all life is very important. I'm very grateful for the people who are of these areas, who have given us their time and their space, their spiritual self to share with us today. And mahalo for everybody who is listening in and being here with us. Mahalo for all of you to be here. I hope you give good attention. These sharings are not as often as they could be. And so when they are shared, we have to be very grateful for them. So mahalo to both of you for willingness to do that today. And that's it.
Well, I think, Haunani, you explained what ahu, it's a mouthful for me, ahu, aku ahu mai. I think you explained very well to the participants what that means. It's actually we're coming together as learners, but with the responsibility to probably become a teacher one day. So like you said, Haunani, I hope we're very grateful for the Brunos to be here and that we can learn and learn well. We have a 3-year plan in our enrichment program, and we're going to take a look at the elements in the next 3 years. And this year it's been land. Next year will be water, and then the next year will be air. We already started in January with a presentation of how Indigenous people are represented at our national parks, and especially here at Fort Vancouver. And it was very interesting how there's a lot of work to be done to tell the story of our Kanaka that were here in the Pacific Northwest, and how do we want their story to be told, especially since they were living on this land. They also married Indigenous women, and then they also raised their families here. So that was a very interesting presentation, and I know I think it's on our YouTube tube. Is that right, Lealoha? I think so, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. Well, this year's theme is Kulai'iwi, which is homeland. And I'm going to have the Brunos introduce themselves here in a minute. But one of the things that when I met Clifton and Christine, I met them at a conference, and their work with the people at the conference on land. And I think, Cliff, you made a mural. Is that what we did that year at the conference? Was that you at a mural okay, it must have been somebody else that looked just like you.
It's probably Toma. Toma does mirror. He's a relative. So
well, we met at the conference, and we've also met at many different conferences and meetings throughout the couple of years. And one of the things that impressed me about Christine and Clifton is their work and how they keep Indigenous foods and systems alive. And when they went to Hawaii, and what they gleaned from their trip in Hawaii was something very different that most of my friends who go to Hawaii for vacation. And what they seemed to understand here, they took their knowledge to Hawaii. So it was very, very, I was very heartfelt that, you see Hawaii like we see Hawaii, and we like to see how you see this land. And that's what we're here to do today. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll start off and introduce yourself to the participants, and then we can begin. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Clifton Bruno. I'm Wasco with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs.
Katamika, which is one of our greetings here. And my heritage is Basque, Comanche, and Irish. So I have 2 different Indigenous heritages, but both of us have always lived here in Oregon. We're both born here. It's just I'm the first person in my family to be born in Oregon. And Clifton is
been here since time immemorial.
Yeah, since before Oregon. So much longer. And we've always lived in Oregon and have enjoyed our life here. And as Louise has mentioned, actually our last, a lot of us remember our last time we traveled, like we really traveled before the pandemic hit. And for us, that was actually Hawaii. It was a trip that we had planned, and we were very fortunate to have that trip in February of 2020. And while we were in Waikiki, was the very first COVID case came to Hawaii via cruise ship, and the person was quarantined and everything. Everyone was safe still, but that was the reality of the virus coming to Hawaii. We were there when that happened, and if I had realized how big this whole thing was going to turn into, I would have saved the newspaper from that and all the discussion that was in the newspaper, but I did not. Because I don't think any of us guessed how big that was all going to be. There we go. We're going to bring up our screen to share with you. Okay. All right, Louise, we have our screen up here, but it's not up on for you.
You didn't click OK.
Okay, I'm going to try it again. Do it one more time. Oh, okay, here's another. There we go. Okay, now we're in business. Okay, there we go. So like we said, we were in Hawaii and enjoyed very much anytime we got to meet any of the local people. And we did some things that would be considered somewhat touristy, most of it though visiting natural areas and enjoying any chance we could of actual Hawaiian food prepared by Hawaiian peoples.
And talking to the locals about the foods.
Mhm. We also stayed with a friend on a farm and learned a little bit, a very small farm, and learned about all the different plants they were growing and some of the challenges. My son with holding up a root of a grass that grows and invades over in Hawaii, that the roots are down over a foot deep, and we were helping dig some of that out of their pineapple patch. And Clifton learned about sheep. And then we have, apparently it was Red Shirt Day. We didn't know that. We all got the memo. A committee we're on about first foods. Kiahe Tan John is on that. And so we got to meet him in person. He lives there north of Hilo a little bit. And we got to actually go meet him in person instead of just being a voice on the phone.
Well, on Zoom meetings.
Yeah, well, now we do Zoom meetings, but back then we just did conference calls before the whole Zoom came out. So we enjoyed learning all about that. It skipped ahead. Sometimes it does that. Apologies. Okay, just a sec. There we go. Okay. Today, actually, this is now for our area, fiddlehead and nettle season. And today I actually gathered some fiddleheads, which is the bright green ones there, all cooked up in a pan from last spring and in April. And when we were in Hawaii, we saw some giant ferns and their giant fiddleheads coming out, and we were very excited. And of course, we think, can we eat those? Do they eat these? And when do they eat them? And how do they eat them? So that was our thoughts. And so we're very excited to see plants that reminded us of home, especially since they were so much bigger. It's very exciting.
And here we have two other plants we prefer not to have in our area. The one on the left is poison hemlock, and you can get a chemical burn from that one.
Mm-hmm. So we just want to say ahead of time, just like with the fiddleheads, you don't want to eat every plant that you find. Not all plants are safe to eat. And the poison hemlock, which can be found throughout the Northwest Oregon and in Washington too, is a very invasive and very dangerous plant because you can't even touch it. And if you do have it, you need to pull it and put it in a plastic bag and wear protective clothing. If it touches your clothes or your gloves, you have to wash them. You have to be very careful. And it looks a lot like the Queen Anne's lace, which is the other one. It's very similar, which is a native plant, which is not a dangerous plant at all, but they look very similar. The poison hemlock will get white flowers similarly. One of the ways of knowing that it's poison hemlock is the shafts of the stems are very smooth, and they will even get a reddish purpley tint at the bottom, where the Queen Anne's lace does not get that color. And the Queen Anne's lace, the way that we remember is if you look and you see little like hairs on the stems, then it is not poison hemlock. And so the joke we say is the Queen's legs are hairy. So Queen Anne's lace, the Queen's legs are hairy. And that reminds us of how to tell those two things apart. So please, whenever you're working with plants, learn to identify plants and how to deal with ones that are dangerous. Also, if you are gathering plants, make sure the place you're gathering from, that the soil and water that the plant grows in is safe. And if you don't know its history, if it's safe, then you don't want to gather it.
And our ancestors throughout most of the North American continent had considered, we lived on Turtle Island. And you look at the shape of it, it kind of resembles a turtle?
The turtles are also very important because the different parts of the shell represent the seasons of the year and the different moons of the year, and learning your space and what you need to do in different seasons of the year is really important. And if you live in Western Oregon, it can be completely different than if you live in Central or Eastern Oregon, because the Cascade Mountains makes a big, big difference. So this is a very special place to us, not too far from where your Auntie Louise lives. This is called, it's near Portland, and we call it Quamish Prairie. And the top photo, you see that it's very green. That is in March. And the next photo is at the end of April. So only a month later, the completely transforms. And this is an area that is a wetland. And during the winter, it'll be completely flooded with water. And then in the summer, it dries out into a very dry prairie. So it's a very interesting place and a very interesting microclimate.
Have you been out there yet?
We go Tuesday.
You go on Tuesday. Okay, gotta let us know.
Yeah. But what the official probably time to go out and gather, we anticipate to be early May.
Okay.
But we're going to start checking the first.
Because it's kind of flooded right now.
Yeah, the first check is Tuesday. We don't anticipate to find a lot. If we expect it to look a lot like the upper picture. So prior to gathering the camas plant, we gather together, those of us who are coming together to do this, and give thanks to the Creator.
Because we feel it's vital and important to thank Creator and to thank the plant people for giving us all this food, this nutrition, sacrificing themselves for us.
So this is a photo taken just before we do the blessing. And you can see all of our different digging tools. Some of them are very traditional digging tools, just as the digging stick leaning up against the man in the black jacket and tan pants. You can see his up against his leg there. Very traditional style digging stick. But other people have shovels or digging sticks made of metal. And everybody's welcome to use what you have available, and no one is shamed for not having the completely traditional digging stick. And so all the tools are blessed and we all come together. And one thing I like about this photo is it shows people from throughout the region, which in these areas, there were seasonal rounds and people would come together from different tribes and share the resources. So starting with the man, again, with the black jacket and tan pants, he is Coquille from the Southern Oregon coast. The next person is Cow Creek, which is from inland, toward the southern part of Oregon.
South of Eugene.
South of Eugene. And the next person is part of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz, and they're coastal and inland, about mid-level. And their territory also comes up into Portland. The next person is Nez Perce or Nimiipuu, and they're from Eastern Oregon and Idaho area. And the final person, all in blue, that happens to be our youngest son. And so he is Wasco tribe from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And all these people have connections to this place. And that's one thing that the maps you see showing where tribes lived does not show the seasonal rounds and how people came together and shared the resources in different locations.
Well, and how the Willamette Valley was actually managed, because there's the story of when there was the ice dam and it broke through, and the scientists have stated how there was the Missoula floods, and those floods flooded up throughout the Willamette Valley. So a lot of people back then really didn't live year round in the Willamette Valley because of that incident. They would have caretakers for the longhouses, but the Pacific Northwest people would come in during the harvest seasons and stay at those lodges, then would go back home.
So here is examples of people participating in gathering the camas bulbs. So it's the bulb that we eat that grows under the ground. And you'll see how there's like, especially where the little boy in the red jacket, that there's the camas around him is crowded together real tight. But further in the distance, there's less camas. So what we do, and the upper left picture shows that we're digging camas out of the crowded areas, and then we transplant some to the less crowded areas, like in the lower left picture. You can see an elder teaching a child how to do this. And so we take some for food, but we also transplant and take care of the land while we're out there. And without people engaging in the land, the camas does not grow as well. It needs to be tended.
And you notice the picture on the left, why we gather the camas only when it's blooming is, you notice the white flower? The white flower is what they call death camas. The whole basic plant looks identical to the camas. It just has a different blossom. Even the bulbs of the death camas look similar. So that's why it's vital that you know your plant.
And many times you don't collect plants while they're blooming unless you're collecting the flowers. But in the case of the camas, it's very important to only collect while blooming. And then the other photo shows a bunch of bulbs with the outer skin already taken off, and those are being prepared to be cooked and eaten. And those bulbs are on the small side compared to what camas used to be, because hopefully with more tending, we're going to get more and more bigger bulbs.
And you can't just eat these camas raw, because the starch, the complex starch structure of it, our bodies cannot digest them, and it would make your tummy feel real bad. And cooking it down over 2 or 3 days breaks down those starches to where you can easily digest it.
And it actually will become sweet tasting, but even though it's sweet tasting, your body can process it properly, and it doesn't give issues with blood sugar spikes and things like potatoes can do to your blood sugar. So lots of healthy nutrients, and it sticks with the body, helps make you feel full for a long time.
And here's where we're digging the pit to cook some of that camas. You get the proper rocks. You cannot just get any rocks, because some of the river rocks, if you put it in the fire, they can just explode just from the heat, and or when you put water on it, literally explode. It can be dangerous.
So when we're out there, we're learning from each other, and we're teaching the next generation. As you can see, the people handling the rocks are learning all about those rocks as they're handling them and lining the cooking pit. And they will then know how to recognize the proper kinds of rocks in the future. The next step is then building a fire and getting those rocks really, really hot, where like they're glowing hot.
Then after it's gotten hot enough, you take the coals out of the pit, put a little bit of the dirt or sand over the rocks, and then you start putting your cooking bed over that. Then you lay canvas down, then put more of the cooking bed, and then you put your food in, then place plant material over the top. You notice the bottom right photo.
So with the photo of all the food there. We have a whole bunch of different squash and root vegetables that we're going to do in this practice cooking pit. And there's a few camas in there too. And so we have all the different plant materials that we use to protect the plants from the hot rocks and give them insulation. The same plants are put on top of the food. And then we use a canvas. Traditionally, we would have made a mat out of cattail. Sticks are put in the corners. You can see one stick in the corner already has been placed in that. And then that bottom picture, you can see them putting the dirt there. They've kept the dirt on top of a piece of canvas, so it's easy to move, and getting the dirt placed back on top over everything. After that, the sticks in each corner are removed.
One at a time, and you pour water down those holes. Those sticks go straight to the rocks. So it actually starts the cooking process.
Mhm. You create steam, which is trapped by the dirt on top. So that's a pit cook. This is a shallow pit cook here. There's some that are done that are deeper. And so learning this tradition of how to cook food in the ground, very important. The next place we're going to introduce you to is called the Native Gathering Garden. It is located in Northeast Portland, not very far from where the Portland Airport is. In fact, we can see airplanes take off and land from the Native Gathering Garden. The park it's located in is Cully Park. So you could look on a map and find where Cully Park is.
And what Cully Park used to be was a industrial dump. They had concrete, wood, and stuff like that all dumped in there after their gravel pit was done being dug out. So
then back in the 1990s, they covered it with, they called a membrane. It's kind of like a really thick type of rubbery plastic stuff. And then dirt, all the dirt and everything and rocks were brought in and put on top. So we were starting with all new soil at this place. And the soil was brought in from different areas, and some of the soil was fairly good. Other soil had a lot of rocks in it and was not very healthy soil. So we had a variety of experiences. And this is a couple of the features. On top of one of the mounds is a bunch of basalt rock columns that people love to stand on and sit on. And then we have our gathering circle that's surrounded by cedar poles. And on a clear day, you can see Mount Hood. And that's a place for people to gather and either informally or formally for ceremony. And this is just a couple examples there. So the goal at the Native Gathering Garden, and you can tell when you're in the Native Gathering Garden at the park, because it's the area that never sees a lawnmower and never sees herbicides or pesticides. So it's very natural looking. And so this is in the summer. And just an example of how you could have a lush yard full of plants that have edible uses without a lot of fuss. All these plants, once they are planted, you don't have to plant them again, and they will self-propagate. And actually, you'll get more and more of them. The first year we had the fireweed, which is the picture with the little girl in it with the bright pink flowers, we only had about 6 plants. And as you can see, we have way more than 6 plants now. And I'm looking forward to see how many come up this year. Very tall, healthy plants. And in all these plants here have uses to eat or to make teas out of. I want to especially feature, there's a plant on the left side in the lower part that you see all these kind of like pinkish balls, flowers, flower clusters. And that's one of my favorite plants out there. And it's called a nodding onion. So nodding like you're nodding your head up and down. And that's because those flower heads actually kind of hang down like it's, and in the
bob
breeze,
around in the wind.
yeah. And that actually is in the onion family, but it is a native onion. And so you can plant it and it just grows on its own. It's green leaves, stay green year round, and you can use it year round. My favorite part is eating the flowers. They have just a yummy oniony taste, but not too strong. Sometimes the leaves can be a bit strong.
And we don't really run the sprinkler system in this area.
Yeah, once the plants are established, you don't really have to water them very much. If it gets dry enough in the summer to where the plants might start turning brown, like for example, the thimbleberry, which is those big light green leaves on the left, that's on both sides of that photo, their leaves will dry out and kind of shrivel up, but the plant does not die. It will come back when the rains come back. It'll grow again. So if you want plants that don't require much fuss, then native plants are a good choice because they're suited to this area. Out at the Native Gathering Garden, we have times that people can come out and help. And one of the things that really focus on is having all ages and all abilities.
Well, community, families.
So the big lower photo, lower right-hand photo, you'll even see somebody in an electric wheelchair that came out from the Native American community. And they had a person that just volunteered to help them. And they would pick up plants and they would choose which plants they wanted to be planted and kind of direct where to plant it. And so that other person was being their hands and legs, but they were definitely participating and enjoying the day. And you see a lot of kids and even somebody's little dog was out helping dig the hole. It was a Dotson. He loved digging and he enjoyed that. And so we typically would gather and have these times to learn about the plants and tend the plants and help remove plants that we may not want to have in the garden. So when you're looking at planting, you need to get to know your space.
Know your neighborhood, know your town. As you go through town, you notice areas that are warmer and areas that are colder. And in learning this, you can decide what kind of plants you're going to have in your garden or in your yard.
Learning about the history of your soil. So we just moved into the house we live in now. We moved in November. And so this is our first year here. And we do not know the history of the soil, but we did find out by talking to neighbors that it looks like the previous owner, before they sold the house, when they were getting it ready, cleared out a lot of plants. And we noticed that there were the areas all the way around the yard in the various growing garden beds, no plants were growing except for some trees. So that indicates that they probably use some pretty serious weed killer herbicide chemicals on there to get their house looking ready to sell. So we know that that was probably used recently. We don't know if they had a habit of using chemicals in the ground. So we have chosen to do all of our growing that we're doing in raised beds on top of the ground and in containers with dirt that we know the history
that we
of.
brought in.
Yeah, we're bringing in dirt on top. Even though our dirt might be pretty good, we know that there's some chemicals in it. So we're just to be safe, we're going to grow everything on top. And we're learning the weather patterns. We're learning which way the wind blows in our area. We're learning which side of the house is the sunniest and which is the shadiest. Because there are plants that can grow in the shade, and there's some plants that love a lot of sun. So paying attention to that and then fitting the plants in to the right space is very important. And the other factor you have to think about is your own lifestyle. Some plants can survive here in the Northwest, but they need a lot of caretaking. And so you have to know, can I take care of that plant? Do I have what it takes? Do I travel a lot? Typically, I know this year maybe not, but typically do I travel a lot and then I won't be home to take care of it? Or if I'm going to do that, do I need to install an automatic watering system? Do I need to make sure and have a friend or a neighbor that can come over and take care of my plants? For us, we like to do a lot of traditional gathering in the late summer. And so plants that are ready to harvest late summer do not fit for us because we won't be here to harvest them. So we want plants that are ready
Midsummer
midsummer to harvest primarily.
or mid-fall.
Mhm. We wanted to give one example of a plant that you could consider, because this is a plant that's very versatile. You can even use it as like a hedge, is our own local wild rose. And what's fun about it is in the winter time, you have the rose hips, which are bright red.
Concentrated vitamin C and minerals.
So this is a plant, if you're planting it in a safe place, you can choose to use the petals and the leaves to make teas or make an herbal infusion that you put into lotions and salves. And then of course the rose hips can be also eaten and used, or you could just have it as decorative in your yard. It's all part of kind of what we call a food forest.
And deter any animals or people from walking through any particular area because of the thorns.
There's an area in our front yard where we're planting blueberries, which we're going to talk more about in a minute. And we have a plan to put some of the wild roses between the roadway and our plants to deter neighborhood dogs and things from coming over and bothering our plants. And it'll look nice to have these wild roses.
But make sure you make a good barrier, because these wild roses will just expand and grow, take over areas.
Yeah, so you have to pay attention. If you don't want it to take over, you have to take out the new shoots that come up from the ground and remove them. And you can plant them somewhere else or give them away. A lot of places have in their neighborhoods plant exchanges. There just was one in our neighborhood I heard about that happened today. I don't have anything to exchange because my garden is new, but you can trade your plants that you have extra of, which is a real fun thing to do. So we're going to share a story about a plant that we really loved, but we can't grow it right down where we live.
This is here up on my reservation, up in the High Cascades. You notice our son Thomas squatting down. See how small those plants are?
So this is around 6,000 feet elevation. And these little berry plants, they're our favorite berries, these little blueberries. And we just—
rich in antioxidants.
They're delicious. We love the flavor. And so this is one of our favorite foods of all time. But we could take some of these berries home with us and plant them in our yard, and they would probably survive, but they will not produce fruit because they have to be under snow for about 6 months of the year. And we don't have snow for 6 months of the year. It sometimes feels like it when we get snow, but we don't. So these plants will not produce berries down here. So instead, we've done a lot of research and we've started our own blueberry patch, finding different species that we think will be similar, but are adapted to grow in our area. And so I just had put an example here of all the different, how you look for a big description when you're researching plants. You know, this is talking about, like, I picked a bush that said it was both edible and ornamental. So my neighbors and and myself are going to enjoy some blueberry bushes that look good. not only taste good, but look good. And it said it had dark blue berries, which ripen mid-season. So that fits our lifestyle. And they were medium to small in size, which is similar to our berries in the mountains, because some blueberries have huge, huge berries. They also have beautiful pink flowers in the spring. So, and then beautiful foliage that turns red and purple in the fall. And so this is just one variety. And then there's instructions of how much sun it needs and everything. We did a lot of research to plant it properly. And so part of our front yard is now a blueberry patch instead of just grass. And it's a nice sunny location that I think they're going to do well. We actually have 5 different kinds of blueberries. And then we'll see how they all do. Maybe they'll all do great and maybe not. We also planted them a little close together. This is how you plant them if you want them to also be a privacy screen like a hedge, which is it's between us and our neighbors. You can see the fence, the side fence there. And so it'll provide some privacy too.
And we planted more than we're going to need because we'll be putting in bird feeders to protect both our berries and the rest of our garden will be growing because they will be eating the insects. And in growing more than we need, the birds can have their share too for protecting our plants.
Yeah, in the research it talked about how you need to get nets and do all these things to keep the birds off your berries, but we plan to share our berries. We probably for our own use would only need maybe 3 bushes and we have 10. So I think we'll do okay. And so this concludes the formal part of our presentation, as our photo concluded the time that we were in Louise's, as she said, old stomping ground. This was a photo taken on our last night when we were in Waikiki before we went to the Big Island, of what we found to be one of our favorite beaches over there, down away from where all the big hotels were.
You're giving away my secrets.
Yes, it was well, when you mentioned it, I'm like, that was our favorite.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That was our favorite beach. We love that. We went back once we found it. That's where we went back to, and we'd like to hang out and watch the sunset and enjoy it there. So
well, it is. That's what it's good for, and people like to go there and hang out. That's exactly what we did.
And you got to see what?
Oh yes, we were watching the sunset, not this night.
Well, first of all, we've seen in new movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, what?
They talk about the green flash as the sun sets. And so
we thought, oh, that's cute.
Yeah, that's funny. So not this night where we had clouds, but the first time we were there watching the sunset, I jokingly said, watch for that green flash. And we're watching and it happened. And we're like, whoa. And it happened one more time for us on the Big Island that we saw it. So we saw it twice when we were in Hawaii. So that was really cool.
I never watched the sunset because I had to be home by dinner. So there you go. I had to catch the bus home, so I had to get on the bus quick.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I'll have to remember that.
We were there in February, so it wasn't very late. It was like, what, 7:30?
Yeah.
Something like that. It wasn't really late because we were there in February. But yeah, that was definitely a wonderful, wonderful spot. And so now it's time for any questions or comments or discussion.
So can I share?
And I'll unshare my screen.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Aloha, mahalo, thank you. I wanted to say that there's so many practices that are so similar to our own. And I'm sure when you were in Hawaii that you came across some of those. So as a medicine person, I go and gather a lot. And the blessings of a group coming together, the traveling there, and as well as the going home, and of the tools and of the work that you're doing at the time is, resonates with us. It's so much part of our family of being. I wanted to answer when it came to the fiddlenecks. I had those the first time when I was in Alaska many years ago. And that the hapu'u fern that you referred to, you were showing the pictures, is edible. And it is full of medicine also. But it is not tasty. I shouldn't say that. We should be grateful, but it's usually at a time of famine that it was eaten. And there are two ways to cook it. You can steam it. And I don't know if they talk to you about all those filaments that come in the air, but you have to be very protective, because you discussed a lot about being safe, the safe of the person, safe of what you're eating, safe of what the water that comes across your lands. So it's the same with this plant. It releases this filament and it gets in your eyes, and so you need to really be caution when you do it that way. But if you bury it, as you folks seem to have very similar ways of cooking the food, it does take a long time to cook it. It's very, very fibrous and kind of chewy. But if you steam it, it doesn't seem to have as much flavor as when you bake it under the ground more. So I just wanted to share that back, because you were wondering. So it's yes, it's very similar that way. And then you talked about knowing when the plants have blossoming, when they're white and then they're purple. That yes, we have similar plants that look very much like good plants, or when you're on a hike, you eat the berries. But those plants, if you don't really know their full growth time, they can be toxic for you. So I don't know if they'd kill you, but they definitely would cause you a lot of discomfort. So knowing plants are really important, and that's why sharing the knowledge from generation to generation, so you can love the land. That's the difference, isn't it? That if you don't share and participate, you don't learn to love it. And if you learn to love it, you will always take care of it like a family member. So I just felt so much in tune with what you were saying, and so much familiarity with what's at the core and central spiritual connection to our lands around us. Mahalo. Thank you very much.
Well, Christine and Clifton, can you share with the people some of the some of the activities, events that you like to go to share this information, and also talk about, you touched on the seasonal round, and Hanani talked a little bit about eating the foods when they blossom, etc., seasonal rounds. I think some people are not quite aware. Today, we don't eat, now we can have a cantaloupe in the winter. Before we couldn't, right? Or we didn't have tomatoes in the winter. Now we can, because the season. Tell us why those seasonal rounds, that way of harvesting and whatever, is really important in your traditions.
Well, it comes down to like when that ice dam was created and people are starving. So it's one of the legends that when Coyote told the people to go up in the mountains and pray and find your starvation food, and I'll go upriver and see what's going on. And when he went way up the river and he found that great big ice wall, and he did what he could to break it open to let the salmon flow again. And that's when the Missoula floods happened.
And so we tell people, think of the calendar not as a bunch of rectangles and squares, but think of it as a circle. And this circle continues year after year.
And traditionally, our calendars is nature, and in nature there are 13 moons, and we went by the moons. And we would have a basket of each food type. That's usually what, 3 feet tall and about a couple feet wide. And it'd be 13 baskets plus 3 that you would have to have for each individual in the village. And those extra baskets were for any visitors that would come in or for any trade you were going to be doing.
So traditionally, the foods were primarily what you didn't eat right away, you dried it. So dried foods was the way to preserve the foods. And once dried, as long as it stayed dried, it could last for over 20 years. Most of the elders say 21 years was the magic number where you could keep something that long. They usually did not keep it that long, except for in places like there's places, for example, up in the mountains where they would store food in a dry place, maybe in a rock cliff or something, to have stores of food for in case you need it when you go up there to do that. One of the things that is really impacting a lot of indigenous cultures in their food gathering is the climate change that is happening. The photo we had where we showed us with Kiahi, we're part of a group with the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, and we've been having meetings about this, and there's going to be a summit in September. And we just had a meeting this week talking about traditional gathering, and to hear from the people from the Arctic regions, it's so sad how much their climate is rapidly changing up where they're at, and the permafrost is melting, and it's just really sad.
And the
And
bogs are drying out.
yeah, and then of course coastal areas are being flooded, and then I know that we've heard from people from the Marshall Islands and how much they're being impacted by the rising sea waters. It's just a real scary time, but we are seeing we had to change. So the time for the blessing of the huckleberry season had been happening roughly 1 week into August for as long as we could remember, maybe hundreds of years, thousands of years was the time. But they've had to change that to the end of July because the berries are ripening sooner. And by the time then the people do their blessing and go pick berries, the non-native people have already gone and picked them.
And a lot of them do it in a disrespectful way. There are these rakes they use that they just scoop up the whole bush and it'll break branches up. And what they don't realize, these plants grow up 5, 6, 7,000 feet. And how old those plants are, they have no idea. It takes a long time for those plants to recover from that type of abuse.
So yeah, that's one of the big challenges we face. But paying attention to the climate change and
Right.
trying to adjust our traditions and ways
Right.
with the climate changes that are happening, and things we can do to help the salmon and help the berries and help with the tending as much as we can.
Well, you talked about a nursery that you, last time I chatted, and you threw out a nursery name that you seem to, you said that you go to, maybe we could go get some more indigenous plants, and I can't, it was a funny sounding name, wasn't it? Or okay, good. But I couldn't remember
It's
the
called
details.
Boskey Dell, Boskey, and then Dell. It's 2 names, Native Plant Nursery. It's in near West Lynn. They are 100% native plants.
Okay.
Other places carry native plants. This is 100%. And what's kind of cool about the place is you get to see how you can use native plants to landscape in Western Oregon.
Oh, that's
They
good.
have all their place is lovely just to go and walk around and enjoy.
Yeah.
And they have a little stream that flows through. It's just beautiful.
It's an adventure. Hey, Hanani, we got to go on another adventure.
Yes.
There we go.
It's fun. But yeah, we actually have purchased several native plants
Right.
from them to add to
Right.
our house this year.
That's good. That's good. Well, thank you very much. And Cliff, we might have to have you back when we talk about water, and you could give us some salmon stories or something and
Yeah.
talk about the Columbia River, which will be, I think next year we're going to be taking a look at water between here and also our native Hawaiian and some of the similarities that we have. So we really thank you. Very grateful for you to be here today. It's so good to see you. I always love seeing you guys and talking. We got to get together in person soon. You know what I mean? Okay. And so for everyone, I hope that you enjoyed today. I enjoyed and learned a lot. I took a list of some plants. I hope you put some, copy some down. But next time when we meet in May, we're going to talk about kalo and how growing kalo in the Pacific Northwest and how some people are being real successful at producing mostly the luau to make laulau or luau stew. And so we have growers that are growing it, and maybe we could have a guest. We're looking at getting a guest from Hawaii to talk about growing kalo. So I hope that you'll be able to join us next time as we talk about using this land to grow our food now. How can we do that in the best way? And listening to what Cliff and Christine said about knowing the soil, which I'm learning with my patch, learning about the soil. So I hope that you'll be joining us next time. So with that, Lealoha, do you have something you'd like to say about the Hawaiian Civic Club? You want to give your little commercial? She left.
Yes,
No.
Auntie. No, I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm right here.
Just kidding.
No,
Come
yeah.
back. Come back.
Yeah, no, mahalo. Let me switch out all these things here so that we're not echoing when I go on Kalamai. 1 second.
Oh, I'm glad they enjoyed it.
Okay. Ah. Oh yeah, mahalo. Oh, and you guys are also in my background there. Well, first of all, mahalo nui loa for being here today and for sharing your folks mana'o with all of us. We're very much appreciative, especially for our youth programs. For Haloa, we definitely want to incorporate this information, this ike, this mana'o, to our youth. One of the things I really appreciated that you folks said was it's about going there, showing up, and being able to learn, have that ability to still learn, and while you're learning, teach the next generation, so that they can carry on. So for Haloa and for our programs like A'o Aku A'o Mai is very much about that. It's about how do we sustain our cultural practices by teaching the next generation, right? So that they can carry it on. That's the hope, right? That's the work that we do. And so our efforts like this one for A'o Aku A'o Mai to all of you folks is one of our great programs we have through Kalo, through Ka'ahalahui o Ole Kona Hawaiian Civic Club. We are members of the Mainland Council of Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, as well as the Association of the Hawaiian Civic Clubs. We're an organization founded by Prince Jonah Kuhio, who has truly laid the foundation for all of us to really be uplifting to the voices of not just Native Hawaiian people, but of all Indigenous people. And so programs like this bring to light conversations we need to have within our own communities, as well as those conversations we need to have with all of our Indigenous people, all of our Indigenous communities. So, for more information about what we're doing as far as Kalo, please visit our website at www.kalohcc.org. As mentioned before in the beginning of our program, if you would like to become a member, please visit our website as well to join us. There's a lot of good work that we do, a lot of good work that our Hawaiian Civic Clubs do, and a lot of good work of our partnering organizations and community members like the Bruno Ohana that we would like all of you folks to be a part of. So please, ehele mai, join us, and mahalo, Auntie Louise. Auntie Louise is our part of our education committee. and she's, you know, leading this on. And sorry, I'm looking at my cheeks. My cheeks are a little bit rosy because even though Auntie Louise said on the script, Kaylee, you make sure you do the closing. Le Aloha, I just had to like, I was like, oh no, let's, you know, kind of like impromptu action at the
Oh, that's
end.
right. It
So
wasn't in the script. Sorry.
it wasn't in the script.
Oh,
When you said my
sorry.
name, when you said my name, I was like,
Oh, I'm
what,
sorry.
Auntie?
That's right. Surprise.
So thank goodness for these this Zoom filter action, yeah. But it kind of help with the rosy cheeks when you in when you're in the moment. But you know, again, mahalo nui loa. Mahalo nui loa to Auntie Louise, mahalo nui loa to Auntie Honani for joining us today. Ashley Helenihi as well as Nami Helenihi, mahalo nui loa for opening the program. And I know I definitely want to attend the call part of this. Oh, mahalo nui loa, yes. So our next, I believe Auntie Louise, you already kind of shared that, right? Our next series is coming up in May, and so we, you know, we wanted to honor, of course, honor the land that we occupy today, right? Our Native American ohana, and so bringing mana'o of that. But we also want to bring to light of Native Hawaiians, and so our next series will be about how do we grow kalo? How do we grow taro on the continent, and how do we make it sustainable as well? And so we're working with that, and we're partnering with some pretty awesome organizations at home to bring that to life here. So
Right.
please join us. We don't have a specific date yet, but once we do, we will load that up. You folks will see it all over social media, and we'll send it out to all of our members. So mahalo nui
Yes.
loa. I think I shared. Okay, I did.
You
Okay,
did.
thank
You
you.
shared what you need to say. So
Okay.
everyone, you know, think about go to the nursery and look at your plants. Go and take a look at your yard and see what's growing there, what's working, what's not working. And we'll see you again, because you're going to need to get a spot to grow your kalo now, because there's some of us that we can share some plants with you, and I hope we'll be able to have more taro patches in backyards. So with that. What was that? What did I hear? Test negative, but stay positive. Was that right? Did I say it right?
Stay positive, test
Yes.
negative.
Stay positive,
Yeah.
test negative. There you go.
And then dash Erin Helenihi. Yeah.
That's right.
Erin Helenihi.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's where I heard it from. I said, who did I hear that from? So that's kudos to Erin Helenihi. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And hui hou. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
All right. Live is done.